In the winter of 1933, the streets of New York City were covered in a thin layer of snow, and the lamps hanging on the sidewalks glowed with a faint yellow haze. Secret speakeasies, or speakeasies, were teeming with customers, knocking on doors behind black-painted walls, whispering passwords before entering. But what was being poured into the glasses that night wasn't an intoxicating drink. It was a slow poison that seeped into the veins of thousands of Americans, sending them writhing in cemeteries or hospitals. The story began years earlier, when the U.S. government passed Prohibition in 1920, completely banning the manufacture and sale of alcohol. Organized crime gangs, led by Al Capone in Chicago, took advantage of the vacuum, smuggling liquor and manufacturing it in dark basements and clandestine factories. With the black market on the rise, the U.S. Treasury Department decided to take a drastic step, adding toxic substances to the industrial alcohol used in factories to deter those trying to divert it into liquor. In 1933, with the Great Depression deepening and millions impoverished, many began drinking anything containing alcohol, even if it came from a fuel barrel or a paint factory. Within weeks, hospitals in New York City alone received more than 500 cases of poisoning, hundreds of whom died, while others lost their sight or minds forever. Newspapers were filled with terrifying headlines. One drink, and death is on the way. Alcohol cemeteries swallow the poor. But the most horrifying scenes occurred in the emergency room at Bellevue Hospital. Doctors, accustomed to operating on gangs and street victims, stood helpless before waves of patients vomiting blood and screaming with unbearable pain in their heads and eyes. One nurse wrote in her diary, "We didn't know who to blame, the bootleggers or the government. Everyone was pouring death into bottles." Under pressure from public opinion, and with politicians realizing that Prohibition had completely failed, the 21st Amendment was passed in December 1933, ending Prohibition. But it came too late for the thousands of victims who died from the poisoned liquor. This incident remains a stain on American history, an example of how a hardline policy can turn into a humanitarian disaster, even if it begins under the banner of protecting the people.